Yeah, we're there. We can say hello to everybody. I think. Although it does occur to me that I didn't really do a sound check with everyone. So, Pip, can you tell me what you had for tea, my friend? What interesting anecdote about your tea?
I've had no tea. All I've done is put out fires regarding my racing season ahead, but everything is resolved.
Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, you were caught up in the whole Silverstone thing, weren't you? In the whole.
That very much pales into insignificance. But I don't go into it till things blow over a bit. So, but needless to say, all resolved. Everyone's happy
and healthy. There we go, Chris. Say hello to the live stream. Assuming that it's started, can't tell if it has. Yeah, it has. It's there. It's there. There we go.
Hello, live stream.
Why don't you test them with some F1 trivia? Wait. You can do.
Oh dear. Quiz time. Yeah, actually do have the quiz for next week.
Yeah, well, that would be foolish to tease those ones, wouldn't it?
Although you could seem really intelligent next time because you'd have all of the answers.
What do you mean seem? What is your problem? What do you mean seem? That is.
Well, you know,
it's.
We should have brought an old quiz up to test the live stream. So
we've all got our personas to keep up, and mine is the dodgy quizmaster. So
no, terrible quizmaster.
Terrible. Thank you,
Matt. Why don't you say hello to the live stream? You are big on the screen right now.
I am going to say hello, regardless of my exposure or lack thereof.
Yeah, sorry, Matt looks a bit fuzzy. If you comment on how white Matt looks, that's pretty racist, guys. So let's not go there, all right? He was born that way, and we don't mind.
There's not much sun in New York in winter.
Okay, so we're pretty close to getting going. I think we've got a show as far as notes and stuff go, though, haven't we, Matt? I think we know what we're doing. Actually, that's probably going a bit far to say we know what we're doing.
I was going to say that would be a good start if we knew what we're meant to be doing 4 minutes late. It's all good.
It's not late. What are you talking about? People don't come here and
4 minutes on time.
If we were to start on time, people would be horrified, shocked, stunned.
Where's Spanners? What have you done with him?
Yeah, exactly. They would not.
When you go to the cinema, the film doesn't start straight away, does it? It doesn't
start.
You've
got previews and trailers. Here we go. I recreated the cinema experience yesterday because we decided to watch Venom on telly, and it's for a parent. That's quite a big deal. You go, right, kids have gone to bed. We'll get the headphones on to the TV, and we'll rent a movie. And we got popcorn and everything. And I decided that I wanted to recreate the cinema experience, so I forced her to watch trailers. And I was like, no, we're going to watch trailers. So I selected some trailers in advance to watch. There was one with Mila Kunis, just so that we could look at Mila Kunis. And I was pretty upfront about that. So we're watching this trailer so that I can look at Mila Kunis. The film looks terrible. The Spy Who Dumped Me.
Oh.
Yeah. And then there was a film with Chris O'Dowd, right? And I'd heard that the trailer basically gives away the whole story. I was like, well, that sounds good. And it did. You got the whole story except who the lady ends up with at the end. And it's called Something Naked. So we just Googled that to find out who she ended up with. And it was like, that's good. We've had like a 4-minute cinema experience.
You saved 2 hours of your life there.
Yeah. It was a masterstroke. I was pretty pleased with myself. And then we settled into the movie experience. And there was hecklers from upstairs. Dad, I want some water. No, you don't. The time for water has passed. You can just dehydrate now. No, that's not.
Sounds like the Odeon at Bromley.
Oh, mate, here we go.
Could I just ask? You sit there in front of your telly with headphones on.
Yeah, because we've got kids, haven't we?
So do I.
Yeah. What? So you just blast the cinema sound out while your kids are asleep?
Yeah, he sleeps like a baby.
No. Yeah. But I mean, their eyes are a bit older, so see if that makes it there.
Name of the dodgy films you watch.
Venom was all right. Quite liked it. Had some character, some personality. Could have been a half-hour film, but that's not for me to. That's not a judgment for me to make, is it? If they want to make that nearly 2 hours, that's up to them. It's fine. So, Mr. Trumpets, I'm waiting on you. If you're not ready, I have an anecdote. That's fine. So let's see if you guys in the chat room think that I'm a cruel parent. Oh look, this is like a warm-up guy. This is like a warm-up guy, isn't it? At the start of like Conan or something. Where are you guys from? You coming in from Philly? Okay. Do you think this was cruel? My son. He has access to my old phone. I won't let him call it his phone because he's like 8 or something. And I don't want him to say, well, that's his phone. But he uses it, and he uses it to call his friends on Skype and play games or whatever. He he accidentally took it to school, and I believe that was accidental. When he got to the childminders, they realised, oh, you've got a mobile phone with you. That's weird. Like, what terrible parents you've got. Thanks a lot, Treeface. So he said they took it off him. And when I got there, he went, oh, Oscar turned up with his phone. I went, oh, yeah, that makes sense because he would have had it. Okay, fine. So I put it in my bag. When we got home, he came in like ashen-faced. He's like, Dad, oh, I forgot to tell you. I accidentally took my phone in and I've left it. I've left it at the childminders. And it's like 8 miles away. So I know I've got it, but I want him to learn a lesson and own that problem. So I said, right, you know when your sister knocked all the Lego down the stairs? I want you to own this problem. How are we going to solve it? I don't know. In the end, he came up with a terrible plan where he was going to go out in the dark. He's 8 years old on his little bike. He's like, yeah, I don't know how to get there. Dad, can I borrow your phone for a sat-nav? I'm like, okay, how are you gonna hold it? How are you going to see it? He goes, I'll just hold it like this. And I'm like that. And I'm like, okay, go on then, out you go, get dressed. So he gets out in all his like winter gear and everything. Don't you need gloves? Like, no. Okay, so your plan is to go in the dark as an 8-year-old, holding my phone in one hand, with no gloves, down and retrieve your handset. He's like, yeah. And I was like, all right, just look in your bag quickly. And he was like, he's there going, oh, you knew the whole time. So he's pretty angry with me. And my wife said that was really cruel. He said it was really cruel to make him go through that process. But I thought, wow, I just made him formulate a plan to solve it.
I think that's wonderful. I wanted you to go through with it, get your kid cycling down in the dark in his black t-shirt down the street.
I was thinking, how far do I go? Do I get actually out on the road? But yeah, it's like when Ivy.
A lesson has been learned and trust has been lost.
Some trust has been lost, but that is a fine balance as a parent because you can't it can't be daddy fixes everything. So this is what I'm trying to get them to do at the moment. When my daughter dropped that whole Lego down the stairs. And it literally carpeted the bottom half of my stairs with Lego. I was like, right, well, you caused this problem, so you have to own the problem. And that was it. That's my parenting. And Merkman says, this is why I don't have kids. Yeah, no, that is fair. And there's so many things that you just go, oh, I didn't really realise that's what I'd signed up for. But you go, oh well, such is life. Like this morning, like just going to him, I was like, just get into your room, guys. You're just arguing. Just get to your room. Just separate, and it'll all calm down. Like, no, right, get to your room. And went, fine. And he slammed the door and went, oh, blinking hell. Look where we are. Dodge Mott says, what's covered up behind the guy in the right-hand corner? Okay, guys, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what is behind the guy. That, all right? Are you ready for this? Don't tell anyone, all right? It's me. It's another picture of me in the green screen. That is the video that they can see. Skype annoyingly puts it in the top right-hand corner there, and I can't get rid of it.
So unless they mean me with this thing here.
Oh, actually, that could be it. And I've just given away our secrets for no reason. Yeah, what is behind there? Dead bodies?
Yeah, there's a skeleton behind there. No, that's my sim racing rig. Actually, it's my play seat.
Right.
If only I could turn it around and you just see the mass of boxes and rubbish that is behind the camera, that would blow your mind.
So you're quite good at sim racing then?
Well, I've done it occasionally. I did that 24-hour thing.
You know how you turned up at the Missed Apex event in your own race suit and then couldn't even finish ahead of me in the final standings?
I got tired, Spanners. I got tired and spun twice.
Did you actually fatigue? Because that's pretty weak on like 4 short sprints.
I'm so weak.
All right. Trumpets, you ready to rock, mate?
I think so.
Let's do it.
Sound good? My entire microphone stand had collapsed and was about to tip over.
Oh,
so
sorry. Well,
for
that's worth it, though, because surely... Shit show, Williams. Yeah, let's start the show. Othno, calm down. We're all right. Okay, Matt's mic stand is about to fall down. So, okay, so if people are being stressy in the chat, I am going to time out and then damn you with an ancient curse. That I think we have come to that point, and that's all I can do now. All right, guys. Lights out, everybody. Lights out. Amateur Dramatics, Missed Apex podcast. None of this will do. You've all been terrible in rehearsal, but the audience is here. So we're going to have to go ahead with it. Let's do it. Clear my throat beautifully. Merkman says, less tipping, more recording. All right, let's go for this. You are listening to Missed Apex podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready. It's nearly F1 time. I'm joined by your favourite, Matt Two Rumpets. How's it going there, Matt?
Oh, I am so glad to be back on the show after all that traveling.
You have already been on a show since you're travelling.
No.
You were on last week.
You made that up.
I dreamt it. All right. But there's only one Monday left until Formula One. That's how I see it. There's only one working week, and then the next time we make it to a weekend, we've got F1 cars on track for a season where I genuinely don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I am filled with curiosity because I myself am not entirely sure what we are going to see and what we are perhaps not going to see.
We should tell the people listening and watching that we are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind permission of our better halves. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. We're also joined today by our terrible quizmaster, Chris Catman Turner. How's it going, Chris?
Oh, thanks, Spanners. Terrible is a great word.
Look, I think it's really brave that you've kept up this comedy bit of ill-thought-out questions with ambiguous answers for all this time. It's like, I don't get it. I'm assuming it's some kind of like Stuart Lee-inspired bit, but I mean, hats off to you.
Thanks. Do you know what? I actually had to Google who Stuart Lee was. I like to think of myself more as a drunk history kind of guy. I'm far more interesting when you're pissed, and it makes much more sense when you're pissed. So.
Oh, good-o. Well, you'll also be with us for our live sim event at Simply Race and doing a bit of a quiz section there as well.
I shall indeed. It's all ready to go.
So I've heard you're quite good at sim racing. However, we heard you were quite good at karting, and you turned up in your own kit and failed to even beat Spanners.
Yeah, I got tired. I don't know. I'm a bit weak, Spanners, really.
All right, we'll try and focus for the sim event. We're also joined by... Excuse me. We're also joined by another race driver. No, we haven't got rid of Bradley Philpott because of that lane system. Air quotes, lane system. But we have racer Pip Hammond with us. How's it going, Pip?
Hi, Spanners. Yeah, all good here. Happy to be on for the first time.
It's a bit familiar. Pip's quite a informal nickname. You don't want me to revert to Philip?
No. Interestingly, with that, I didn't actually know my real name was Philip till I was 11 because anyone had always called me Pip. So there you go.
At no point did a grown-up turn around and go, "Look, your name is actually Philip," or like had to fill out a form or anything.
No. The first time I went to play for a football team, I needed my birth certificate, and that's how I found out.
That's amazing. That is a great story. You've been on Jake Sanson's pit board before. Let me assure you that this is slightly different. Random yelling is discouraged, so sorry about that. But you will be allowed to get a word in edgeways. I'm not quite as overbearing and talky as Jake. Tell you what, Matt, why don't we get into some big, dirty news? With the volume up. Big, dirty news. Well, I think the big dirty news, Matt, is Williams. It's all going on at Williams, or is it all not going on at Williams? It's a whole thing, isn't it? And it's dominated the news cycle. Even the most hardcore defenders of Williams are just sitting there now going, "Oh, what?"
Yeah, and let's be clear about it. This has been a really interesting, 72 hours since we heard that Paddy Lowe had miraculously, and for personal reasons, stepped away from the team. And there was a lot of speculation as to who was leaving whom and for why. But I do know that getting into it, we had heard rumors that perhaps the Strolls were playing hardball about the payment for buying out Lance. We heard rumors that perhaps some Kubica money wasn't showing up. We definitely understood, it was alleged by parties not to be us, that the reason they were late to testing was because they were having a hard time getting parts from third-party vendors and suppliers. And Summers and I actually had a chat and was sort of like, well, why didn't they just bring last year's car and sort of rock up for the first 2 days and say, oh, we're doing correlation because we always do that. We need to do that. That's exactly what we need to do. And then show up with the new car next week or whenever they finally get it together. But I believe you might have some additional information for us.
Well, first of all, I heard from an ex-team boss Oh, actually, I don't know. Yeah, whatever. I'm sure it'll be fine.
There's lots of extra bosses. Could be anybody.
That some teams have, when they've been in the Williams situation, have just invented some problem. So they've all turned up, gone into the garage, and then gone, oh, unluckily, like a hose went. Yeah, it's going to take us like a day to fix this hose. Oh, no, it's going to take 2 days to fix this hose. Williams could have just turned up, set up the garage, and just invented a mechanical problem that they were working through. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, if it was their 2019 car that wasn't actually ready and it wasn't money that was the problem, they could have turned up with a 2018 car because they've got 2 drivers there that desperately need track time before the season starts. And if they had all the money in the world, they would have turned up with, a 2011 car. They just needed track time. The guys just need time behind the wheel to get going. So there must be something more than just not having the car there.
So I initially felt that there was no way that Paddy Lowe could be responsible for them not getting car parts. I guess the puzzle is, if we think that the car was late because it was engineered in such a way that they couldn't get the thing together and they couldn't build the car, then yes, perhaps Paddy Lowe could be to blame. However, if that was the case, Matt, it just seems so unbelievable that it would only be 3 days before testing that they know that they'd miss it. Because when you're building something in an engineering-y way, you've got all these milestones to meet. They would have set milestones like practically every day leading up to testing. So there's no way they get to day 3 and go, we're going to miss the final milestone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we could just look at Mercedes as a counterexample. They knew back in November that if they pursued the stuff that we saw week 2, there was a potential for it not to work out, and they had already devised a plan so that they had something runnable in week 1.
Yeah. So, right. So they had a, if all else goes wrong, here's what we're going to stick in and here's what we're going to run.
Yeah, but they knew that back in November. So you were absolutely correct as to how long they would have known this is potentially a problem. If you think back to the McLaren documentary, we saw the same thing. They knew coming up to it that floor was not going to be ready, and they had to keep on kicking deadlines back to meet it. So, yeah, maybe they didn't share with the public, but internally they had to have known.
But then again, so exactly proved my point. There's a team with all the money in the world. They basically brought a car that wasn't the spec they're going to run, and they ran it for the first week. That's what Williams should have done if they had any money, which for me is where the problem lies.
All right, and I think let's hear from Pip first.
Yeah, the whole Williams thing's just gotten so sad. You hear about the Stroll money potentially not coming through. I mean, Williams in the past have relied on actually drivers trying to get out of the team to fund their racing. Like with Button a few years ago, Stroll again in this case. It's not unusual for them to be waiting on the money like that, or at least that's not how it seems. It could be a factor in it obviously could be a factor in the Paddy Lowe situation, but it's just crazy how quickly staff seem to come and go from this team.
They could do a Sauber and employ 5 drivers for one seat and get money that way.
Yeah, and there was no repercussions at all there, was there, Trumpets?
No, none at all. And along those lines, I'd like to announce that I am now second, third, fifth test reserve driver in the sim, possibly for an amount of money that my Kickstarter could raise after this show.
All right, let's get Matt involved in F1 properly. So we have developed, Matt and I, on our travels and our conversation, an understanding of some things, haven't we, Trumpets? And I think the question the people listening to us would have to ask themselves, and certainly did ask themselves last year on Reddit when we understood certain things, is how much should you trust Missed Apex?
Oh, you should completely and totally trust us.
No,
Send us your savings now and small unmarked. Oh, sorry.
That's
wrong direction.
That's not what the path I was going down. I think you knew, and you've deliberately said that. No, the Should You Trust Missed Apex podcast as a source of journalism? No. I am not a journalist. Matt is not a journalist. This is not a newspaper. However, we've developed a nice platform here at Missed Apex podcast, and we're very fortunate that we get to have some conversations with people much closer to the paddock and in and around the teams than Matt and I are. So, instead of seventh hand, now it's kind of fourth hand. and we've developed an understanding of the picture around us, and then I'm going to share that understanding with you. And I think that's fair, isn't it, Matt? And just say, well, take no more from it than that, but this is how we understand things.
Yeah, when we say things, it's because it's not just because we saw it somewhere randomly on the internet. It's a little better than that. But we understand we haven't double sourced everything. We haven't checked accuracy with themes.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of a show. This is meant for a broader context sort of a point.
Right. So my understanding is, and I think this should come to no surprise, that the reason Williams didn't turn up for testing in those first 2 days was they could not supply the money for the parts to suppliers to get their car out on track. And we're going to, I think, build a little bit of a case of why it's cash rather than just some engineering problem where they just missed some deadlines. Oh, we just missed some deadlines. Oh, it's a bit embarrassing that, but we're back on track now. Because as I understand it, the cash flow problems have continued, and we have heard reports that Williams have been going door to door, knocking on teams, asking them to share parts that they have in reserve so that they can get the second car out for testing. For Melbourne, because obviously they've done all they could, Matt, to get one car out for testing, but you need two for the race. And what I'm hearing is that they're struggling to get that second car out on track, which points to not just some engineering logistical nightmare, but an actual cash flow problem.
Yeah, it does point very much to that. And we've seen it before. I remember Manor showing up without their software installed and not being able to run for a whole weekend. We've seen Caterham have very similar problems right before they finally went down the tubes for good. And it is sad to see a team like Williams have these issues. But at the same time, I just think back to last year where they denied Force India alone so that they themselves could be ready for testing. And my memory serves correctly, and the chat room is, of course, free to correct me if I'm wrong. They were the sole team that prevented that from happening because they were looking for a competitive advantage.
We'll roll back to that, Matt. Catman.
Well, I was just going to say that just remember very shortly ago, it was 2014, I think it was, just at the new change regulations, that this was a team that was getting pole positions and fighting for podiums, and it's been such a quick decline. It's embarrassing and actually quite sad. They used to be the team that I'm sure you Spanners, when we were kids, were looking up to as like the bastion of excellence.
Mansell's Red 5, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, sorry, hang on a
Damon
minute.
Hill.
No, I was going to say, no, Damon Hill, that's when I first came into F1, because I'm millennial, honestly. Pip.
Uh-huh. The other thing with Williams is they used to be such that powerhouse team that they had the freedom to chop and change the best drivers in the world. They'd win the title one year, Mansell's gone. Prost win it, Prost's gone. Hill won it, Hill's gone, and so on. They're not in that position anymore. It's almost like there's never been a proper transition into realizing we're not at that level anymore. The BMW money was there for a while, and that took them along to quite a lot of success. But it's just they've not grown and matched the rest of the sport, unfortunately.
Yeah, they've been on a gradual decline, really, ever since they lost Adrian Newey over to Red Bull, to be honest. Sorry, they lost him to McLaren first, didn't they? And then he went to Red Bull. But yeah, since he lost him to McLaren, they've just been slowly kind of curving downwards, really.
And that's the kind of factual accuracy that makes his quizzes so great, Pip.
Yeah, going with continuing with Williams, I know it's the equivalent of sort of an info wars of Formula One, but there was Jacques Villeneuve over a year ago sort of predicting the death of the team. And Villeneuve's predicted a lot of things in the last 10 years that, they didn't always come true. But
that's kind.
He did bring light to a choice that Frank Williams made to choose between Claire and Jonathan, his two children, as successor to running the team. And I believe Jonathan's still running the heritage side, keeping all the old Formula One cars going, and Claire took on the F1 team. He called that as a poor decision. I'm not 100% sure I agree, because we can't possibly know the other outcome. But is Catman?
It's much easier to run the Heritage Division, which is kind of out of the spotlight, compared to the F1 team, which has got the massive amount of pressure in it.
Okay, we'll go to whose fault is this, because I know it's not really fair to assign blame, but here on Missed Apex, we will occasionally speculate on who is at fault. And for anybody who's confused, because I keep calling Chris Catman-Turner Chris, and you're thinking of Chris Stevens, the easy way to tell is that Chris Catman-Turner has an opinion, whereas Chris is an integral journalist who maintains his non-biased position.
I have no affiliations to anybody, so I can say what I like.
Yeah, just weighing in on Stevens, I did catch him having an opinion on Formula E this morning, but he very quickly deleted it. So sorry, Chris, but everyone, the world needs to know.
Okay. Next time Chris Stevens has an opinion on Twitter, you need to screenshot it before he gets a chance to delete it. Everybody here, put Chris on your tweet notifications. And actually, no, that's a terrible idea. His tweets are terrible. Trumpets. We are going to get into whose fault we think this is, because Paddy Lowe is either the downfall of Williams, or he is a scapegoat for deeper problems. I think that's one of the two internet-based opinions out there. We were first talking about where has the money gone, and you touched on the Stroll money. So how I see it is that Stroll kind of left Williams a year earlier than intended, so he still had to pay money. So I'm assuming Williams were making promises based on a budget that included the Stroll money that presumably they were going to pay this year, even though Lance Stroll had moved to Sport Pisa Racing Point.
Right. And that's the standard thing as a driver. If you move, generally, if you have a remainder on your contract, you can buy that out from the team, assuming the team is okay with that. And presumably whatever number they had thought was agreed upon has apparently not been that agreed upon. And frankly, and I'm not going to presume this is what has been done, but if I was Stroll and my team is now Force India, I'm sorry, Racing Point,
Sport Pisa, that'll do.
Sport Pisa, yeah, whatever it is. Then perhaps I might strategically have some minor issue with how things are formatted, get some lawyers involved, just kind of prolong the negotiations, because the longer they don't have that money, the less of a threat they are to my team. And it is Formula One.
Now, something interesting about the payments, because the payments for the championship get paid out in 10 payments over the year, as far as I understand it. And the 2 months where you don't get money for the championship happen to be the 2 months where you're paying suppliers, is how I understand it. So presumably all the money that they were going to deliver for parts milestones to these suppliers has come at the same time as them not having championship payments. If they've then lost this money from Stroll, or even if it's been delayed, this is the time that it would hurt the most. And we are not alleging that has happened. We have no reason to think that has happened, but we have heard rumours that money has been delayed, maliciously or not. That was to be inferred, and not something that we are implying. Somebody let me know if we need to edit that further. So that's one source of cash gone for Williams. A lot of responses to when I posted this on Twitter said, well, how can a team survive by withholding parts? So, the thinking is, well, a part supplier is hurting themselves by not supplying the team at the last minute. But there are lots of F1 car parts, Matt, that one supplier supplies all the team. So essentially, if Williams don't pay up, they go, well, okay, you just go to the back of the queue and we'll churn out these units to Force India, Haas, all the other teams that are paying. Let us know on day 2 if you've managed to scrape some funds together, and we'll give you the last ones off the factory line.
Yeah, my understanding is that they do tend to be notoriously bargain sensitive when it comes to the sort of vendor supplied parts, things like brake discs, brake systems, dampers. Not all of that is always designed by the team for the car. There's like Brembo, for example, Carbone, AP Racing, Magneti Marelli. They supply a lot of teams different electric bits and different parts that you just tend to want to be able to screw onto the race car and not have your engineering department messing with, because they're already good at it and you'd rather use that brain power elsewhere. And yeah, that means they're going to have more than one team. They are not going to necessarily go out of business if you don't pay them. They will just sell those parts to some other team at some future time and write it off.
Chris.
But they will have a lead time when they're paid to when they can get them to you, because they've got to ship them, they've still got to package them, do whatever they need to do. So, you know, if it was that close to the line, then I can understand the couple of days delay.
Yeah. So what Pip sort of alluded to earlier was this whole philosophy has changed, where from going to having, you know, the great drivers, the champion drivers, they are now exclusively, I think, funded by what drivers can bring in. So this season, they're in a situation where their plan was, let's be funded by the Stroll money that was coming in, some presumably kind of engine concession from Mercedes for George Russell, money from backers for Robert Kubica, and the test driver money from the Latifis. So if that's their plan, and the Stroll money's been delayed, and the rumour is that the Kubica money has been delayed as well, Matt, they are in serious trouble, because they cannot afford to drop Robert Kubica this close to the end of the season and be anywhere near any Polish nationals. There will be riots everywhere if they were to turn around and go, you know how we've been building your hopes up for the last 2 years and he's in all the team press photos. Yeah, it's not happening. Pip, surely it's a nightmare.
It is, but is it even still the correct decision for Kubica to come back and race that car? I mean, how far behind are Williams now? It can't, you know, I don't see it going well for him currently. It's a hiding to nothing.
It's a two-man race at the back, really, isn't it? With nipping at McLaren's heels, probably about 5 seconds a lap slower than them. But it'll be Russell versus Kubica at the back, and you just won't be able to tell who's better, because they've got such a dog of a car.
Yeah, and it's awkward because you can go racing as in anything for the minimum money you can afford to spend. It just means you'll be bad. Like it's in every level of motorsport all the way up. You can do it for nothing, but you'll be bad. And so if the money's missing for Williams, it's just, you know, the fires are just going to keep raging. It's not going to get any better over there.
So trumpets, would we say Kubica is the driver at risk if money problems are truly what is causing Williams' troubles at the moment? Robert Kubica has a young driver with a lot of backing waiting in the wings.
Yeah, he does. You've got Latifi on deck. If and we've seen this before. Was it Caterham? Oh man, I do believe I even put it in the notes for myself, but other notes have showed up since then. Haryanto at Manor. That's who I'm thinking of. His sponsors suddenly stopped showing up with money, and sure enough, in the course of a couple of races, he was duly replaced by one Ocon. And that was in 2016. Yeah, I think you will see Kubica in a race or two or three, but if the sponsors aren't able to fulfill their promises, then I would look for Latifi to replace him pretty early on. Williams can't afford to not have money.
So Mark Jackson in the chat room. And hello to the live chat. You can come and join us on YouTube by searching for Missed Apex Podcast on YouTube. And you can watch the video and chat along live. And it's really useful for us to get around the picture of things. Mark Jackson says, Sky News reported they changed the design at the last minute and that caused the delay. So I guess there's two things there. Did they just interview someone at Williams and they said, oh, yeah, it's a last minute design change? All right, well, is it a last minute design change that is making them struggle to get two cars to Australia? If that's true, that is just something that I am understanding at the moment. But we'll see. I mean, pretty sure Sky reported that Red Bull weren't going to be switching to Honda as well at the time. And old Missed Apex in our shed did. But at the end of the day, Matt, we're just a few blokes in a shed.
Indeed we are. But it's important when you read stories like that to understand, is this what Williams is saying corporately? And if so, it would not have been a last-minute change. It would have been a mid-November, early December change or discovery that put them on the path to being delayed. And I had heard the same thing, too, that they had found something, and that was part of the reason. But that perhaps is not the only reason.
I would like to know, though, when they were informed by the FIA that their parts were illegal, so the suspension parts and their wing mirrors were illegal, because if they've had a lot of lead time for that, then that could be construed as an issue. Whereas if they've only been told this week, like we have been, then maybe that's slightly different.
Christopher Fonseca knocking it out of the park in the chat room here. How bad was the previous design if they changed it and this is what they've come up with? Let's kind of hope, for the sake of the sport, that a lot of this has been blown out of proportion. Like I say, we're just sharing with you our understanding of that picture. Matt, we want to get off Williams pretty soon, but a last point?
Yeah, well, with regards to the basic design, it apparently is a big improvement to last year's car. But without money to develop, or let's say even show up with a car to race, then you're talking about an entirely separate issue.
And Williams being funded purely by the driver money through the door means that these kind of problems are probably going to keep happening. If you look at the back three, when we had the likes of Marussia, Mana and Caterham Chris, they were pretty much exclusively funded by paid drivers, and that model it didn't work, and Williams is now taking on that role.
That's true, but it's not like they haven't had the Martini money for the last 3 or 4 years. So they've been in that decline well before they had to rely on their drivers to fund them.
Yeah, Chris Fonseca brings up another interesting point that had crossed my mind, which is now if you're Mercedes, now you're looking at Williams being so vulnerable that you might finally get that quote-unquote B team that you really wanted, even though they themselves swear that's the last thing they would ever do. They may not any longer have a choice in the matter.
Let's have a little look at some more big dirty news that isn't Williams. Big dirty news. Let's go further up the grid to the top bit, to the good bit. Are we all aboard the Red Bull hype train? I am hearing that Red Bull themselves are very optimistic and that people are placing their power within about 3% of the Mercedes power at the moment with that Honda powertrain. And my first instinct when hearing that was, is 3% behind tragically bad or incredibly good? It could be either. However, to put it in context, the last time they were this close on power to Mercedes was the RB7, and they dominated and took the title. Catman, are you on the Red Bull hype train for 2019?
Oh, absolutely. I think they've got a great driver there in Max Verstappen who can do it if the package is there. The problem is that even Williams aren't 5% behind Mercedes. So being 3% down on power, it is a massive disadvantage even now. And even in the last few seasons, they've been able to build their car purely on kind of aerodynamics and being able to really go for those headlines like Monaco, Singapore, whereas actually now they're going to have to build their car around going to all the circuits and be able to beat Mercedes at all the tracks. Is that going to be possible for them? Are they going to be able to claw back from the niche that they've carved out for themselves?
Yeah.
Going, oh no, look at me, I've got no power. Whereas actually now, they have some power, allegedly. Then are they actually going to be able to use it?
Pip, are you aboard the Red Bull hype train? We need this team in the mix, don't we? We need the top 5 car driver combinations up there really fighting, and Bottas as well.
We absolutely do. I mean, it depends what metric you're quantifying to get to 3%, because we're all 3% different in DNA to a banana. So
that's not true. I'm going to have to factually correct you there because I know the amount of percentage DNA we share with a banana, and it's 57%. But yeah, your point is well taken. Yeah, 3% down on power, but it's purely power.
Totally, mate.
But even like in the pre-hybrid era, Red Bull were down on power from the other engines on pure power with that Renault power unit. And they were still able to find, the blown diffuser and be very dominant in 2011, 2013. So if the sort of common feeling is, if Red Bull have this amazing aero package, they just need something close to the top engines and they'll be able to make their advantage really work through the corners.
Yeah, and the whole Red Bull thing, like you say, is to rely on the aero to be close enough on power to get there. It it depends whether we're going to see a Red Bull that just commit to running big power and blow engines up to be competitive often, but maybe not reach the end of the races. Sorry, Matt.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to yield to the floor to Trumpets just because he's trying to get in. You hold your ground, Pip.
So it's just like, no, I think I will yield the floor. I've got lost in my point.
All right, that was pretty weak. All right, Trumpets.
Yeah, well, I was going to bring up that for all everyone's talking about the horsepower within 3%, yay, whoop-de-doo, that what I've heard that intrigues me most is that the drivability is far superior to what Renault had provided them. And I was actually going to ask you to comment on what they might mean by drivability versus just raw power.
We didn't know who you were talking about, but if you look at the live stream, like me and Catman were definitely pointing to where Pip. Pip, you're the driver. You tell us the things. Drivability. What does he mean by that?
It's in how easy it is to get the power down on the ground, whereabouts that power is delivered, it within the rev range of the engine. So a drivable car isn't making all its power right up in the top end of the range. It's, you know, you're using torque through the corners rather than just chasing big horsepower numbers that are only getting you anywhere at the end of the straight. So if it's in the way the power is delivered, a lot of that's in how the throttles are mapped now as well. So if Honda are on top of that, which, you know, in that respect, they may always have been on top of the software side of the engines. It may have just been the hardware letting them down. We don't know which side's caught up, but it is ultimately a combination of all of those things. But it's much easier for a driver to have less metering of things to do. If they can just stand on the gas rather than try and feed it in progressively, it makes the car much easier to drive, and you've got the brain power to spend on other things.
Mark Greenhouse says, as a McLaren fan, this talk of a decent Honda engine is extremely depressing. And Erudite 450 asks, is it 3% of peak power or 3% of base power? Those are words I don't understand in that context. Does anybody know how to answer that question and if it's relevant? No, good. We're all equally blank. So that's fine. Let's see if anyone else can come and explain to us the difference between base power and peak power in this context. Pip.
I'm assuming that the meaning of peak power would just be the ultimate maximum horsepower spot. So you get the graph displaying where the power is, and it's just the highest point. The base power would essentially be the torque curve, how long that is, how tall that gets, where it comes in during the rev range. So those are all the factors that come into the drivability of the engine.
You secretly know things and are smart, aren't you, Pip? We're gonna speak to you in more detail in just a couple of minutes. But let's just do a final kind of analysis of where everybody put the teams in testing order. And we know that you obviously take that with a pinch of salt, and it's what the teams have shown us. But in general, I think people are kind of looking at that testing result and saying, well, as it stands, on face value, you've got Ferrari, then Red Bull, then Mercedes, then Haas. But we have to remember, Matt, Mercedes didn't look strong in 2016 either, and that allowed Nico Rosberg to win a world championship.
If I'm being honest, I would not only flip-flop Red Bull and Mercedes, I would put a little gap. I would put Haas closer to Red Bull than most people would even imagine.
Oh, that's controversial.
Well, it's okay to be controversial. Now, this is based entirely on what we saw in testing. If I take it in historical context, I'd go Ferrari, Mercedes, just about the same. Maybe a slight edge to Ferrari out of the box. Yeah. Red Bull some distance behind, and then Haas closer than they were last year. But if I look at just testing, and this is perhaps just down to the issues that Red Bull had during testing, they didn't have the same, they didn't have the numbers that showed me they were where they were last year.
Yeah, but I guess if you're looking at testing times, or you're looking at kind of the ability to do the long runs, because if you're looking at the times, you might as well lick your finger and put it in the air and see where it lands. Because you know, as you said, Spanners, Mercedes never really show their hand in testing. They're always going to run much higher fuel loads. You know, if we look at the testing, you're going to put McLaren up in that top four.
I can never get the mental image in my head out of a piece of Martin Brundle's commentary. Martin Brundle, iconic commentator, but even he was feeling the strain of Mercedes being so dominant in 2014, 2015. And I remember distinctly Q3 in Australia 2016 when we thought Mercedes had been caught by the pack, and then in Q3 Hamilton went and pulled out a blinder, and in his commentary he all but said, "Oh no, it wasn't true. Mercedes are fast," and that'll stick with me forever. But I wonder if we'll have that kind of disappointment this year as well, Chris.
Yeah, you could hear his heart breaking as he
it
crossed the line.
And it wasn't because he's anti-Hamilton or anti-Mercedes. It's because he wanted that competition back in.
Yeah, and to be honest, last year was exactly the same. Ferrari looked like they were able to match Mercedes, and then it just never materialised. So I'm really hopeful that actually Ferrari looking dominant in testing might mean they're actually able to give Mercedes a bit of a fight for once.
And hopefully Red Bull in the mix as well. Matt, let's move on a little bit because we need to speak to our new friend Pip. More than a man. More than a racer. It's Pip Hammond, the kind soul that gave Matt Trumpets a chance to drive in a real race car all the way around Silverstone in a Nova. And I was supposed to be there as well, but I got called in to substitute my boss in a meeting at the last minute, who I hate now. I hate you, boss, if you're listening. And Matt got to drive your Nova race car around the full Silverstone Grand Prix track. It's like having a kick around at Wembley Stadium, and I hate both of you.
I just need to throw in championship winning race car, and then off we go.
Pip, are you crazy? You were going to let me, and you did let Matt loose in your race car?
Yeah, you can infer that from there. I mean, the thing for me is, it's always nice to get people involved in any kind of media who love motorsport and want motorsport to be bigger and want everyone to know about it, and get them in the car and know that excitement. Because I don't subscribe to the idea that everyone who is a pundit or a commentator on the sport has to be an ex-driver. You can be excited and knowledgeable about something without doing it every day, but it does help to have that little taste. So that was the reason.
Oh no, absolutely, and this is why we've been doing our iRacing stuff, and we go out and try and do karting, and we're doing our sim racing event this Saturday. It's all about turning a wheel. Like being a football pundit who's never had a kickabout would be crazy. So I love it that these guys are now turning a wheel much more, and even at our low level of karting and iRacing, we're going wheel to wheel with each other and trying to understand the rules of it. Before we talk about Matt's performance, tell us just a little bit about your club racing and what you do.
Okay, well, I race with PDC Racing. We come out and we also all identify as a team, but we don't employ people. Which is more like a collective that go racing together. I think this year at peak we'll be at 6 cars in the Classic Stock Hatch Championship that runs. We were going to run 4 Novas by mid-season. There's a Peugeot 205 GTI and a Fiesta XR2, so all the proper 80s hot rods that we all remember. But it's it's as much about making sure we're getting cars on track for people that appreciate going racing. Not everybody can afford to do it. I count myself as very lucky that I've been doing this now 10 years, and I could never let go of the Nova because the racing is amazing. It's really close. It's the cars are dead raw to drive, and we're also doing some endurance racing this year with a student team from Wrexham. There's a Welsh word in there, and I can't pronounce it, so we'll call it Wrexham University. And I will learn the pronunciation.
No, I think if you're going to be as stubborn as the Welsh and stick with that language, you've just got to accept that people are going to say it in random ways. I say just go for it, and they just have to kind of deal with that, or just add more vowels.
Well, maybe I can learn it, and then I can send you it in a voice note, and you can stitch it in.
So, so Pip, if people are going to follow your antics online, where can they do that?
Sure. All my accounts are at Racer Hammond on Instagram and Twitter. I think YouTube is up to date on the name, but probably not on content, because there was a period a few years ago where I used to get sort of thousands of views, and then something changed, and then they all just dived. So I just put the videos on the Facebook pages these days.
Maybe
we've also got the PDC Racing pages too. that you can find on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook too.
Maybe your content got worse, but more importantly, how did Matt do on track? Was he terrible? Tell me he's terrible, otherwise he'll be insufferable.
I'd love to, but he did really well. That's the very short, condensed version of this, and he looked very happy about that. The thing is, it helps if you're somebody who has been a student of the sport. You know, you can get you don't start from zero if you know enough about what you're about to do. You know, a little bit of that can come from the sim, but a lot of it just comes from watching the sport. I mean, thousands of races watched in the time you've been following motorsport, and it's not always F1 either.
And we're lucky here as well, because Brad has given up loads of his time to come on Missed Apex and just talk us through. I think we spent 40 minutes on the initial braking point and entering the braking zone and what you do with the pedal and the difference between the pressures and the types of pressures and how that relates to sim pedals. And I think Matt and I have tried our best to actually listen to that, and my sim racing has come along due to that, and Matt obviously has been able to translate that nicely into a nice fun track day. So follow Pip Hammond everywhere on the internet. Let's get on with some more Big Dirty News. Big Dirty News. Oh, how I love having so many experts to call upon here at Missed Apex Podcast. Chris Catman Turner, I'm going to go to you now. I'm going to focus the live stream camera on you to explain to us how the tyres have been named this year and how to easily understand what's going on with all the different compounds. Go.
Oh, that's a hospital pass, that one. Thanks, Spanners.
What I've done here is I've illustrated that even someone as you, who's so on it and understands it, has seen the system this year, which I thought on the surface of it was going to be better. But here we are on the dawn of the new season, and even you haven't quite satisfied that in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's various numbers and letters and that sort of stuff. They've made it really quite simple for us on race day because they've just got the soft, medium, and hard compounds. But you know, the teams have a bit of clarity knowing, so they can compare the data as much as they are able to previous years by actually getting the designations of the tyres and how they compare to previous seasons. But I'm definitely not the best expert on that.
Who should we ask? Should we throw it over to Old Man Trumpets? Go on then, Matt. Tell us what's going on race day. What are we looking out for? C4 explodes. C2 is some kind of musical note. Lay it out for us.
Yeah, well, technically, C2, 3, and 4 are notes in different octaves if you want to lean that direction. But essentially, we have 5 compounds, C1 to C5, plus our wet tires. And your hard, medium, and soft will be 3 of those 5. In the case of Melbourne, we're looking at 2, 3, and 4 being the compounds. And actually, they've already put up, if you care, Pirelli, who selected what, and you'll be happy to know that almost all of the teams have basically selected almost all of exactly the same tires, either 1 or 2 hards, 3 or 2 mediums, and the rest being the softs, which mostly get used up during qualifying.
That was kind of bound to happen as the years for the regulations have gone on. When Pirelli started, you used to get wild variation in strategy between how many ultra softs people were bringing and how many hards were bringing. But now they're used to what Pirelli, the kind of product that Pirelli are bringing. They're all virtually going to bring the same at all the races. So it's becoming less of an issue. They've made the mistakes already.
Yeah, indeed. And that actually is one of the tragedies, because I still would love for the teams to have free choice as to which 3 compounds they pick for the race. So that if I'm Williams and my car is slow, but I can make it incredibly light on tires, get rid of the pit stop, bring the hardest tire, and I'm just going to start and go to the end, and I've saved myself, about 50 seconds over teams that will be making pit stops. I might not still win, but at least it would be vaguely more interesting, and everyone getting past me would have to earn that getting past me.
Yeah. The other way you could look at that is you could say there are 3 compounds of tyres. Each driver has to use all 3 compounds rather than just the 2. And then you might get even more strategic options opening up there. That could be one way to go.
Matt, I still don't know. Do you think it will become apparent to me, or do I need to listen back to this again?
I would just go with soft, medium, and hard, not worry about it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got one more bit of news left, Matt, before we go into a little bit of an Australian preview. And it's kind of like they do at the beginning of new episodes of Star Trek, and they go like a little recap of things you'd forgotten that you needed to remember. For example, rule changes and stuff. But we've got one little minor topic of Mission Winnow being dropped from Ferrari. Does that mean they're dropping the missed Apex M as well? Because I had no termination contract thing sent through to me. I'm devastated. I loved having our M on the Ferrari.
Yeah, well, it was always a bit controversial from the moment the graphic showed up. But with both the EU and Australia, quote unquote, looking into it seriously, I think the writing was on the wall. I think it was too obvious a reference to Marlboro. And as a result, it has now been removed and replaced with those little stickers or whatever they're going to run instead.
As far as I'm aware, they are intending on bringing it back after Australia because it's not under investigation in the other countries that we're going to before we get back to Europe. And notably, the Ducati MotoGP team, sorry, I swore on the podcast, but actually the MotoGP team, they have kept the Mission Winnow stickers for their Qatar GP, which ran this weekend.
So, Pip, that means our M's got nowhere to go. Surely you can find some room for our M on a race car somewhere?
I mean, we're red and white on my Nova. It fits. It'll fit nicely.
Score. And we are going on. A big shout out to Charles Ford, because we are going on his race car all the way over in America as well. It's very exciting. I love us being on race cars. Trumpets.
Yeah, and to be clear, the argument was that when they put the logo on the car, it bore a quote-unquote resemblance to that banned product that supports motorsport but is no longer allowed to advertise on the actual cars.
So you think the Better Tomorrow McLaren logo will be allowed to stay because it looks nothing like the Lucky Strike or 555 logos that we had on the BAR cars back in the 90s?
It is amazing how a Better Tomorrow and British American Tobacco have exactly the same letters, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
just one of those things.
Well, stay tuned to Missed Apex podcast. We are smooth and mild, and 7 out of 10 doctors say we're good for your chest. There is actually another item to cover before the Australian preview. I haven't yet watched the Netflix documentary because my understanding was it was really for people who are not F1 fans, and it was to draw new people in, and that's kind of busy, so I never got to it. But more and more, people who are massively into F1 and know all the things have been saying I should watch it. So, Matt, should I watch this Netflix F1 thing?
Yes. Yes, you absolutely should watch this. I've watched the first couple of episodes.
Well, why don't we do like a review? Do like a Matt Trumpets recommends the TV thing.
Yeah, I absolutely recommend it. First of all, the cinematography and the shots they use are amazing. The access they had, and even though it's not, granted, it's not the technical access that would really send people such as myself over the edge. Would they catch one of my favorites is last year when Alonso lost a tire in testing. The cameras are right there while he's talking to the engineers, and he turns around and goes, "Is this really necessary?"
He's French. That was such a good French accent.
Thank you very much. That was exactly what I was going for. And then that's the end of the shot. But stars of the show, everyone has said Gunther Steiner. And I say, yeah, absolutely. Haas has put themselves in a great position. And I know there's a complaint that neither Mercedes or Ferrari participated, but in a way, I think it makes it better.
We know so much about Mercedes and Ferrari in a way. We're always, listening to Toto, and we're always, hearing about Ferrari. But yeah, to have like Gunther Steiner pop up and suddenly become a personality, I think that's pretty cool. Catman, are you a fan of this documentary?
I haven't actually seen it yet. I'm hoping to binge watch it with my friend next week. But I have heard that Ferrari got into it towards the end of the season, so you might see some of them in later episodes. And I hear that Autosport, that the FIA are trying to get everybody, or rather Liberty, trying to get everybody involved with it for this year. And they've already started filming in Barcelona hoping that that's the case.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It's fantastic advertising for all of the marques that are involved in Formula One. And I'm just going to say that the way they cover the Renault Red Bull drama with our friends Cyril and Christian is just, it's worth the price of admission all on its own, because you don't really get a sense when you see them in the conferences and they put on their happy face and we're all buds. It's just a circus. But man, when they start talking about each other when the cameras are on, but each other is not around. Also, one of my favorite things, and I'm not the world's biggest Christian Horner fan, but his nicknames for his donkeys did make me laugh.
Brilliant. All right, then. I guess I've got no choice but to check this out. Is it episodic? Are they releasing them slowly?
No, I think the whole thing is up already, so you can binge it. Yes.
Okay, cool. Pip.
Sorry, it was just another little bit of news that I've seen flashing past in the chat about a point for fastest lap in projected regular.
Of course. Oh, right. We've got to change tack and instantly go for that. Right. So my instinct for this is point for fastest lap. I've seen it in Formula E. Are you kidding me? The obvious victim of this is Valtteri Bottas. Where you go, hi, Valtteri. I know you're on for a podium. Great fight back from 10th, by the way. Like, absolutely stunning. Everything okay with the car? Yeah, it's okay. Why are you on the radio? Yeah, this is awkward. Seb's got the fastest lap at the moment, and we kind of need to take that point off of him. So we're going to need you to go ahead and come in and put a fresh pair of B1 tyres on and go and set a fastest lap. Yeah, but that means I'll miss out on the podium. Yeah, really don't want Seb to have that fastest lap point, though. Do we really need this, Pip?
I think, yeah. I think you're going to create a qualifying battle at the end of the race between the cars that aren't fighting for the win. What's not to love about that?
Okay, so this is the interesting difference to Formula E. And this has literally come up on me as I'm trying to read through comments looking for comment of the week, which we will forget shortly. But if you look at the points gaps between the first 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 places, they're bigger than 1 point. If I'm in 3rd place, I don't want to give up 3rd place to 4th place to gain 1 point, because it'll be a net loss of points for my team. So you're going to be restricting it to either someone top 3 team who's outside of the top 5 and can just chuck on some tires and go really fast, or it's really going to play out amongst the midfield a lot more. I don't see fast lap. And let's remind ourselves, Kevin Magnussen had a fast lap for Haas last year. So I think you're going to see a lot more fast laps coming from the midfield. And that's going to be fun because they generally have a lot less to lose.
Oh my, I've nailed this. This is the Alonso rule. This is the Alonso rule. What they saw was every time Alonso was in 11th and the 10th place car wasn't getting close, he's like, oh no, I'm going to have to retire. My grommet flugel is vibrating. Whatever, Fernando. We know, just come on in. So they're trying to stop guys, in the outside of the top 10 just giving up. But Pip's right. We could see everyone from 11th, 12th downwards get to 5 laps from the end, and they all just stream into the pits. And then you're going to have half the field just randomly super fast coming out with lap cars going, no time for blue flags. I need that point. Catman.
So unfortunately, I think it's only going to apply to people who finish in the top 10. So I think it's basically going to be a battle between Renault and Haas to do that, rather than Williams, for example, trying to strap on a pair and see if they can do anything. I've got a bit of trivia on this, though, is that since 2000, it would have affected the championship outcome only once. And that is in 2008, when Massa would have beaten Hamilton to the title, because he got 2 extra fastest laps.
All right, let's scrap it. Terrible idea. Trumpets.
No, I was going to go along with I was going to disagree. I think oftentimes you see a Racing Point, or I think this year you would see a Haas or a Renault outside of the top 10 and capable of scoring or potentially getting fast lap in the last few circuits. And that would be brilliant because there's no points from 11th to 20th. So giving up 11th for 15th versus gaining a point for fast lap sees we could see 2 or 3 cars in with 5 or less laps to go because you're lightest on fuel at that point, putting on the softest tire, which they might have actually bothered to save, and trying to get an extra point for themselves because in the midfield, single points matter a lot more.
Yeah, but I guess then you'd see them all trying to back off and make space and get in each other's way like they do at the end of Q3, just trying to get that ultimate lap time in.
And would that be as Hamilton is desperately trying to catch Vettel with 5 laps to go? Well, then, yeah, sign me up for that. That's going to be some fun.
Oh, yeah, but do you want to see the result of the top end of the race adjusted because there's a car park at the final corner?
I don't know. Everybody was defending Ocon when he took Verstappen out or vice versa in Brazil. So I don't know. I think it's racing and it just happens sometimes.
The other thing is that this wouldn't be without precedent. There actually was a point for fastest lap between 1950 and 1959. So it has happened before in F1.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that because probably it's an actual fact. Well, never stopped me before, has it, Spanners?
Never, not once. We're all about dedicated accuracy and journalistic integrity here at Missed Apex Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter by going to @MissedApexF1. Me personally by following @SpannersReady, and you can follow Pip by searching for Pip Hammond Racing, whatever we did him earlier. Matt @MattPT55. Chris is a very knowledgeable F1 man, well worth a follow. What's your internet of choice?
So you can follow me on Twitter @CatmanF1. I'm also doing the occasional thing for the Helmet Club still, so you'll still find the Helmet Club actually racing next weekend. We're bringing 2 of our guys to the sim racing. So
that's not the real name of his club. Steve, have we got a timestamp to beat that? Can we beat that out?
Oh.
That's right. Tell me more about I'm not going to say it, about your racing car club.
So it was basically just initially set up to raise some money for a children's charity, one that helped me out a lot. And we did a 24-hour sim race last year to go alongside Le Mans. And since then, it's gone a bit quiet, but we're bringing it back again this year to do various little events. We might have got the trophy at Spanners' karting event for the team points last time, I think. Mainly because Spanners calculated it wrong, but we'll ignore that.
I forgot that happened. I forgot you actually won the team trophy. But it's the result the marshals and the officials called the result on the day, and I don't care about your happiness or reputation. Go ahead and plug that charity though before we move on to our things to remember before Australia.
Yep. So the charity that helped me out is called the Ronald McDonald House Charity, and they provide accommodation for parents with very sick kids in hospital. Very good.
Matt, what do we need to remember for the Australian Grand Prix? Give us a recap.
Well, surprising no one, we're going to start with the tires. And specifically the fact that this year's tires are the thinner tires that we saw at a couple of races last year, generally the ones where the circuit had been resurfaced, which we didn't mention Silverstone being resurfaced, but yeah, that's going to happen. And if we recall last year with the new tires, Mercedes got very hinky during the race and brought in Lewis early and wound up basically handing over the win to Ferrari. So the team's lack of knowledge on the tires is absolutely something you're going to want to pay attention to and listen for panicked calls from drivers to teams and from teams going, how do the tires feel? And the drivers going, they feel like they're going off. My rears, they're gone, because that means that your team could be in serious trouble, not needing it. There has been a rule change for qualifying. The spare oil tank, which was totally not dumping oil into the combustion chamber to be just extra power during qualifying, is no longer allowed to be full during qualifying. Question being, is Mercedes or Ferrari going to be worse off? The general speculation is Ferrari will be suffering more from that, so it could be advantage Team Mercedes. They are also have been concerned for some time about teams using flexible fuel lines to be able to deliver extra fuel above the fuel flow limit, which is 100 kilograms an hour, at certain points during qualifying. They're estimating as much as 1/10 of a liter being dumped in, good for about a 4.5% power boost. They are now special weighing techniques and control tires that are being used to ensure that the teams are not cheating that way. No idea who they might be targeting, but my guess would be probably about 50% of the grid that has the engineering know-how and money to pursue these sorts of solutions. Really important during the race, the DRS is much, much, much more powerful.
Oh.
Also, yeah.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Wait a second. We're getting a thumbs down from Catman there. To explain.
Oh, what another gimmick that is. DRS was already powerful enough. It's just the most rubbish innovation that there could be. I don't see why they had to make it even more powerful to make them just blast past on the straight. But, it's just ridiculous.
Right. Well, the practical effect of this is that the delta required between my car's speed and your car's speed will be significantly less. You remember we were hearing that you needed sometimes 2 or 3 seconds in order to pass. That number should be coming down. And we also heard from both Daniel Ricciardo and Kevin Magnussen that whether or not it makes passing easier, that the new front wing design has made following a bit easier. So we should be able to see cars following closer with more powerful DRS, which potentially means that we'll have more racy race type action in the twisty bits.
What it means is they'll follow closer and then they'll just be able to blast straight past on the straight. I think it's daft. They've made the rule changes specifically to allow them to follow closer. Keep the DRS the same. They didn't need to change it.
Well, the DRS changed so because the design of the rear wing changed. They're bigger, so the effect is therefore bigger. I don't think it was something they purposely did.
They would have had to have changed the way the DRS works to keep it at the 2018 levels. Instead, it has just grown with that effect. So the effect is getting rid of your rear wing effectively. Now there's more rear wing to get rid of.
You and your grown-up words.
What did I say?
I was absolutely correct and very well done.
So we'll keep it to your words. Your racy thing on the twisty bits. I enjoyed that greatly. Yeah, I don't know why they can't just have DRS that closes once you get alongside the other cars. That's such a technologically easy thing to do with the amount of money, resources and technology in F1. So there you go. That lets you get you alongside, and as soon as your front wing is up to the midpoint of the car in front, it just shuts again and you've got an opportunity to fight into the braking zone. It's not rocket science, is it?
No, but we could also have red turtle shells as well. And oh wait a minute, that'd be Formula E.
Oh, leave Formula E alone. It's trying really hard and it's doing really well this season. Although I haven't motivated myself to get into it this season. Although from what I hear from people I trust, this is the season to jump in and start watching Formula E. Matt, I think we're going to leave it there for now. We've got a lot of excitement before the next Grand Prix. Loads of news is going to come up, I'm sure. And I cannot wait to start seeing cars back on track. For us, I think it's on Thursday, isn't it? Will it be Thursday that the free practices are starting? Is that the way time works with Australia? No, it's the other way, later. So we have to get up in the middle of the night on Friday to Saturday night. And you see, no one knows. No one knows. Just don't sleep to make sure you catch all the practice sessions. And until next time, remember that Spanners never forgets comment of the week.
Comment of the week.
Already in the chat room, they were yelling at me once I started the outro. Very busy chat room today. We love having you here. Even the people that I know are listening and have messaged me and are too scared to come and say hello. Come and say hello on the chat. If you're watching but not typing, say hi. Who is the winner or who is the nominees for this week's comment of the week?
Well, I would start with Mark Greenhow. The answer is Charles Leclerc, just because that struck my fancy. We have Chris Fonseca in with 2. The wet tire is technically called C1, but he spelled it SEA.
Oh, that is... Yeah, there's no way to make that work on a podcast, but we will do that in tweet form.
Yeah. Yeah, and also with William should have had something at testing. It's not rock, R-O-K, it science, as in one of their sponsors.
Nice.
So he was punny today.
Oh,
as a dad, I appreciate that much. Mark Greenhow, again, as a McLaren fan, this talk of a decent Honda engine is extremely depressing just because it's true. And Michael Brown, with a diss of Damon Hill, is as bad a pundit as his Arrows was a race car.
Let's give it to Mark Greenhow in honour of all those McLaren fans who might have to sit through a season of the Honda engine being magnificent. So you are the winner of this week's
Comment of the week.
You can see us on Sunday at 8 p.m, where we will be joined by Chris Stevens, Nick Numbers Alexander, and our token Australian video editor, Steve Amy, for the race review. Matt and I will next speak tomorrow afternoon, where we do our Patreon Wafflecast. For the people who are kind enough to support us, you can support us at patreon.com/missedapex. Last week, we accidentally went 45 minutes, 10 of which were about F1. But this week, we'll keep it to a tight 30 and actually talk some F1 as well, Matt. Until next time, guys, remember that wounds heal, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever. This was Missed Apex. F1's coming back. It's nearly here. I hope it's good after all this build-up. Australia's always a bit rubbish, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always a procession, and it's not like any of the rest of the season either. It's a completely different circuit.
One, there was that Alonso crash that was brilliant. You know, when they first had, before they had the last year, before they had the Halo. No, Australia is always a lot of fun. Australia is like Formula One's version of Formula E. Nobody really knows quite what's going to happen yet.
It's like delaying the pecking order for a week. That's what Australia
Yeah, for 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks though, isn't it? You just go, it's just. And the thing is that you try and get people hyped up for the season, and then it's Australia. Why not start in Bahrain or China? And then you go, see, come on, stay with me for the rest of the year.
And don't think I didn't notice. As soon as Pip said I was good on track, that was the end of the segment.
Oh, I mean, I can't tell you how crushed I was when it dawned on me, because it's like, I'm a fairly good employee at work, and my boss is like, right, I've got to go to the States. You need to cover this customer facing thing. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'm completely on it, boss. And then as it dawned on me, I sat down next to my wife, like ashen faced, that it was going to conflict with driving at Silverstone, and like she was like, what? I'm like, no, I've got to message Pip and Matt and tell them that I'm not coming. And I was like, I need to quit engineering now. It's 3 days of just wasted life that I could be being, All right, come on. Someone employ me for those 3 days.
And just to be clear, like for everybody, one of the things about Pip, and I'm just, because he's very modest dude here, is he's the only person I know that I can have a 3-day WhatsApp conversation about suspension with. He rebuilds engines and cars in order to keep them running on the track. He's won a Porsche 924 championship in Britain. He's won 750 twice, and this year your endurance series, you and Gavin are racing. It's a Lotus, right?
Yeah, it's an Elise. It's an older one. It's an S2, but it's going to be largely unrecognisable from the standard form. The guys keep teasing us with pictures of it, and it's the first time I'm going into a season driving a car for somebody else. So I'm sort of twiddling my thumbs, and I'm not involved in the build, and I don't like it because I'm a control freak about these things. So it's going to be interesting. I think they've got access to stuff that we don't at PDC. We operate out of Jason's garage mainly, and Jason's my boss, Jason Wood at PDC, and he has a very nice garage that's heated with all the lights and stuff, and isn't the tent that me and Esther built the Porsche in. So
stop being such a control freak, Pip. You should just try being like me and being like just easygoing, with the live stream and the audio and stuff, just like whatever, That background hum.
Let me give you the why. I had a race at Silverstone in 2016, and it was when we started racing the Porsche. Well, it was the last round of 2016. It was the end of our first season, and a lot of people there just to be a part of it. Everybody wants a job, so you think, right, what's a job nobody can do badly? So I handed my friend a breaker bar. Oh, just check the wheel nuts, and there was this sort of groan sound that only metal can make when it's moving in a way it shouldn't. And it pulled one of the studs out, and we had to change the front hub 15 minutes before the race. But also at Silverstone, this was at about 11:15, and they have a church break where you're not allowed to make any noise. So we, yeah, they still have a church break at Silverstone, and
Fine.
so we're trying to very quietly put the car back together with this hub, and I'm quite dramatic when things go wrong. Like I have this big grey box of just loose nuts, bolts, and bits, and I sort of picked it up on my head and launched it across the garage. It's like, somebody find me some wheel nuts. So everyone did have a job they could all do, which was scurry around and find some wheel bolts to go in the new hub, and we got it out, and I actually won the race, which is pretty cool. But that's why I've gotten more controlling about it since, because that was a lot of stress I didn't want.
Yeah,
Sorry.
fair enough. So I'm going to ask. You said a lot of very nice things, and I think my favorite thing is there was a little clip of us when I came in from the first or second, probably the first time, because Pip, unbeknownst to me, decided that I should drive my own siding laps.
No, that's normal. Normally, though, it's in a procession behind a safety car and there's no overtaking. It's not normally 2 hours into the day when everyone's got used to it. So
it was a bit much. But we were getting out of the car, and he leans over and he goes, "Well, you're not afraid of the speed. I'll give you that."
Okay, everyone, I have to interrupt you because Matthew Carter has jumped into the live chat, and he's shopping me because he messaged me that thing about Bottas being dragged in for the extra point to stop Vettel getting it. Obviously, I delivered it in a much funnier way than he could because he's a very serious grown-up man. But he messaged me straight afterwards going, "Hey, nice joke. Where'd you get that from?" I'm like, sorry, not sorry. We are a collective. Everything will be absorbed into the common good. Yeah, but look, there he is. He's come and join us. He's come to join us. Happy days. No, I'll admit to it. I love it. I steal people's jokes all the time, especially Matt's.
Oh.
That's when you see his face all twisted up. It's because I've stolen something funny he said to me on WhatsApp.
Which is always because I'm a hilarious dude. But no, I have. It's one of those things where it's amazing to me that you're not only that good as a driver, but you have also this intense knowledge of the car and its mechanics and the engineering as well. I mean, you're like the Dan Gurney of 750 Motor Club there.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably about where the age of my knowledge sort of ends. It'd be nice if I had that about the Formula One during the show. But I think the thing is, you'd probably get a better insight. Brad races at a higher level than I do, and I think he's either at or just below the highest grade instructor you can be in the country. So if you want the true, a proper true snapshot of where you're at, you need to get in the car with Brad. I mean, but I know how to drive a 1989 Vauxhall Nova GTE as hard as it can be driven before it drops to bits, and that's where I'm at as a driver.
So I'm surprised Spanners isn't asking you at any point, did I actually terrify you with something I did?
I don't think terrified. I've quite a high threshold for these things. I started using a heart monitor. Like my Fitbit, you does it now, but I started using a heart monitor because it always just, when I've been in the car with people who got stressed, you find the mistakes increase, and it's a way of tracking that. And I think the highest spike I had was actually when Esther spun in the morning before you got there, and I was facing sort of 15 cars coming towards me at the entry to the, like just as you come onto the Wellington Straight. So beyond that, I think that after that, like my threshold was too high to be truly scared, unless you just decided to face a different direction and head towards oncoming cars. We had a couple of moments. There was around Brooklands. You got out of shape there. You recovered it well. I think it's important to say that you turned up to drive a car that I'm sure you'd never heard of, let alone like had any experience with before. That was right-hand drive, front-wheel drive, and just all manner of any semblance of driving assist are not present on this car. Cables for the throttle linkage, like a really primitive gear linkage in the car. and it's just a very raw experience. And I'd say that it's interesting. If I'm wasting time, just tell me. But I struggle with Sims.
The show's finished. It's fine.
I struggle with Sims, and I really struggle with Sims because I don't get the feedback from the sim rig, from like a sim rig that I do from the car. And it was only when I drove a more modern car, a TCR spec car, sort of similar but older to what Brad was racing, the Peugeot and the VLN, that I was like, oh, I get this now. Like I'm now a couple of layers behind some electronics between me and the track, and the sim makes sense to me now. I get it. But with the Nova, it's just a completely raw experience. There's no power steering, and there's very little between you and the feeling you get off the road. Sorry,
Chris, you don't need to raise your hand in this bit. This is not the show. The chat room were getting annoyed, going, "We can hear you typing." It's like, I'm getting drunk now. Whatever.
I was going to say, which did you find was better? Did you like having the driver assists and the more electronic experience, or is actually the raw Nova experience where you're driving down the wrong side of the road on the opposite side to the speed cameras, whatever they're called now, with the blue neon lights underneath, which was the more interesting experience?
I mean, the speed of the TCR car was probably what made that better. If it was the same speed as the Nova, it'd be worse. The thing is, the reason I love racing the Nova and I love doing the stock hatch is it's a very good sort of finishing school for drivers, because you learn a very natural form of driving where you're so connected with it, and you can feel that when you push the throttle, you're actually just opening a flap somewhere that's metering air and fuel. Like it's not electronically controlled. So it's I don't know, they're just so raw, and you're so a part of the car, and the races are quite short, so you get in it and you quite cathartically just give it hell for 15 minutes and it's ace. Doing anything longer than that, and it's fascinating as you look at racing championships, and you get the best drivers in the world, and they're working their way up the ladder, and every step of the ladder the races get longer and they have to drive slightly slower than they can. And
it's because they get tired, like me on the karting events, Manus.
And you'd get tired and spin, and then I insult you and swear in front of your parents. Sorry about that. Sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Turner. That was their introduction to spanners, was me calling you an own suit wanker.
Yeah.
This is my friend who has just insulted me, and you've never met before.
Yeah, I didn't.
He's a nice guy.
Chris, honestly, I did not know. We've been doing stuff together for so long. I didn't realise we'd never met in real life. It just didn't register at all, because you were like, it makes sense now that you were like, oh hi, and it was like, because you were treating it that like, oh, here's the first time I've met you, and I was just like, yes, it's just Chris, it's just Catman. Like, all right.
It was the first time I was meeting this international superstar. I got all
international icon. There we go.
Yeah,
get it right.
That's
get it right.
Sorry,
right.
Sorry.
I'm going to kill the live stream in a minute. Thank you very much, Pip, for joining us. You didn't you didn't stutter. You were perfectly fine on there. We'd love to have you on again if you're up for it. And what I would love to do the next time you're on not a race review is just take 10 minutes aside of that and say, okay, lay out for me my path from doing a bit of sim racing and iRacing to getting into a season as a club racer, assuming you lay out like a budget, like people say for their holiday in Cyprus or Lanzarote or whatever, and they put in aside stuff every month. Like do a budget for me. We'll make up a fake salary for me. I know it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but presumably a middle manager engineer could go and do some club racing at the weekend. And we could set a budget around that.
Well, I'm a first year electrical apprentice, so it's possible. And as I said on the show, if you can do any racing and get on track, and for as little money as possible, but it will just be hard. There are paths from club level where the minimum money you have is still possible to get close to the front, and that's another reason I love the stock hatch so much, because the top cars that come up second hand at the end of the year tend to be in sort of the £4,000 mark to buy, and they're generally, maybe like a fire extinguisher service and a transponder away from being on track.
So that's money that I that's not making me go. That's still like Mrs. Spanners is going to really have some words with me. It's not going to get past my long-haired accountant. However, it's not unrealistic money. So yeah, I'd love to do just a little mini feature of that next time you're on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just quickly before you kill it, the format me and Gavin, the way we got going with the Porsches in 2016 was we went halves on a car and shared it for the first season while we got the money together to. Well, we planned to buy a second car, but we ended up leasing it on the basis that we got a cheap lease on the basis we developed the car through the year and made it match the other. And there is a story behind that that's probably worth it.
Okay.
The guy we got the car off, it's like, we really struggled to get the geometry out in the car. And when we picked it up, all the bits on it were right, but just the suspension geometry was all over the place. Like one of the front wheels was in positive camber, which is obviously bad. And they said, we've even tried these elliptical bolts, we can't get it to work. And so I stripped the front hub, and a stone fell out of it. And this car had been like it for like 3 years. So I put it all back together. I spent zero money and about 8 hours, between me and Esther. We just set up all the geo and did no other work to the car apart from to wrap it in our colours. And it was fine. Like we were 1-2 in the championship that year.
Oh yeah, but you do it with your missus, don't you? That ruins it. That's no good.
Well, that's how we met. She used to work on a lot of classic cars with her uncle and missed doing it. And I was like, well, I've got this Porsche in a tent at home and it's winter and really cold. Do you want to come work on it with me? And that's how we got together. So.
Oh.
No, don't knock it. Some of the best things are done in the shed.
And she does a bit of driving too. She's raced in the Nova, and she had her first podium last year at Cadwell. So she's doing all right. She's still only got 4 starts. So.
And you'll appreciate the fact that is it computational fluid dynamics she's getting her degree in?
Yeah, that's right. She should be finishing her PhD in that this year. She's got a degree and a master's in mechanical engineering, and she's doing the PhD in CFD. I would need to go get her from the other room to explain any of that.
It's a while since I've seen a Nova, but it's not the most aerodynamic shape you could possibly think of.
No, that's true.
All right, kids. Just say to the live stream, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We'll see you for Australia. Goodbye.
Cheers.